For we meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear. For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon and to the planets beyond. We have had our failures, but so have others, even if they do not admit them. To be sure, we are behind, and will be behind for some time. But we do not intend to stay behind, and in this decade we shall make up and move ahead. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. The great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it. And the moon and the planets are there, and new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
Hello everybody, it's Max with Crypto Talk Now. In a video that we covered about 10 days ago in regards to the utility run that will lead into the bull run, there were 4 specific coins that were mentioned: Qnt, Xrp, Xlm, and even XDC. Now in this particular update in regards to that particular video, we will highlight specifically what is going on with these top 3 that I feel as though are going to lead to just that, a utility run which will trigger the bull run. And at the very end of the video, you'll see a card where I'll point to where you can view the previous video if you haven't done so already. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's coverage. And this comes straight from the Digital Pound Foundation. And if anything, we know that Gilbert Verdian is part of just that, the Digital Pound Foundation. Now, this was published yesterday. It says 5 associations form industry alliance to guide the UK's digital currency future. Of those 5 associations, you have the UK Forum for Digital Currencies, which is the UK FDC, and they are going to basically celebrate innovation and collaboration across the payments industry. On top of that, some of the key members include the City of London Corporation, the Digital Pound Foundation, the Payments Association, the City UK, and even the UK Finance. The aim of the alliance is to develop better policies, practice, and regulation around digital currencies. As we know, digital currencies have been gaining rapid momentum over the past few years and have the potential to change how society thinks about and uses money. Whether we're for CBDCs or we're not, that is a reality. While there are risks, as we know, the UK FTC recognizes this growing interest and the adoption of new forms of digital money across the globe, and how it will open many opportunities for the UK to remain competitive in fintech while leading financial innovation with the right regulatory framework. Now, as I jump down to this particular paragraph, it states, by combining the expertise and extended network of the 5 associations, the group will seek to enable a safe and secure environment for innovators to grow and attract international investment into the UK. And that right there is a key thing I want to highlight, where it says specifically it will allow a group, this specific group, to seek and enable a safe and secure environment for innovators to grow and attract international investment into the UK. I realize I just read that again, but the point is, one of those innovators is definitely the likes of Qnt. and we'll establish that again here in a bit. It says, while also helping to create a constructive bridge between the associations representing both incumbents and emerging players in the sector. The group will aim to mitigate the actual risks and alleviate the perceived risk through education and the ability to advocate for appropriate policy and proportionate regulation. On top of that, taking the education element further, the new collaboration aims to align the association's education programs and policy advocacy with the UK's regulatory framework and understand the operational impacts, challenges, risks, and potential solutions. This includes the development of common terminology which embraces existing definitions used in this sector into a single lexicon. The group will also take the lead on facilitating discussion and engagement between the UK's existing financial services industry and the crypto industry to help reduce barriers between them and increase mutual understanding of this complex area with just that, financial services. Now, as I went further down, I said to myself, well, this is really interesting. And if anything, I said to myself, I bet you anything there is somebody from the Qnt network that basically retweeted it out, and it was just that. They did exactly that. And of course, it brought me to this. And if anything, check this out. This is from the American Banker. It says specifically, like what you see right here, and that is central bank digital currencies will make headway, but can they coexist? You're going to see a few key quotes from a person from Ripple and, of course, from Qnt's very own Gilbert Verdian. And also, I want to share with you how I feel as though there's that XLM connection. Now, it states, the argument in favor of central bank digital currencies is increasingly hinges on whether different ones can play nicely with one another. A concern that is much about politics as it is about technology. At the end of last year, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology announced the end of Project Hamilton. And of course, here at Crypto Talk Now, we covered specifically just that. And it was an agnostic effort to determine the technical feasibility of a CBDC. Now, while the project did not take position on whether the United States or any country should digitize its currency, it basically provides some ideas on how CBDC could coexist with other forms of payments. Now, I do want to state this, and that is, while Project Hamilton is over, you do realize at the same time that Qnt is very much going to be working on a CBDC. And how do we know that? For instance, they already have been working on that with MIT and also the Federal Reserve. Don't believe me? Well, if anything, check this out. So, as we know, when it comes to the Federal Reserve, Gilbert Verdian has a lot of experience with just that, right? Well, I should say just that, but multiple different things, different organizations, right? So, for instance, the Bank of England, but especially the Federal Reserve from 2017 to 2018. So, going back to this particular article, it states on top of that, that interoperability is a vexing and often politically charged concern that has delayed decisions on whether to move forward with CBDCs in many countries. And I couldn't agree more, because if anything, that is the key issue. If you're going to have interoperability, you better darn well have a way in which these various other countries can do just that, be able to talk to each other. Now, look at this specific quote. And this is basically from Neha Narula, who's a director of the Digital Currency Initiative, which is part of the MIT lab that focuses on cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. States, there is no one single design or set of features. Each country will focus on CBDCs from a different perspective based on their local needs. On top of that, there's this quote from the same person. There are problems, but they are solvable. The time frame depends on the resources that get dedicated to the CBDC projects. Now, Like I mentioned, we did cover Project Hamilton here at CTN, but it states Project Hamilton produced a theoretical transaction processor for a CBDC, and that is referred to as Open CBDC. It's capable of, listen to this, processing 1.4 million transactions per second. Wow. That is beyond anything out there, right? Not even MasterCard and Visa can do that. Last I checked, I think it was like 25,000. And this also provides settlement in under 1 second. Other functions include audit and programming tools that can measure the performance and security of a CBDC. MIT, now listen to this, this is key. MIT and the Boston Fed promise to release more details in the coming months. Who's been working with MIT and the Boston Fed? Who has literally come back from the Massachusetts area? Yeah, Gilbert Verdian, a quant. Now, CBDC projects, as we know, are relatively slow, but listen to this, often with multi-year horizons. The conclusion of Project Hamilton and the advancement of CBDC's projects globally suggests that momentum is building in the new year. We are already in the new year. Quote, there's more of an awareness emerging that CBDCs are a thing, says Cecilia Tamez, Chief Strategy Officer for the Money Transfer segment at Dandelion. Quote, CBDCs aren't new, but people are looking more for a retail purpose to make digital currencies more accessible for consumers. While wholesale CBDCs or digital currencies are designed for transactions involving banks and other large parties, are considered easier to develop because there are fewer stakeholders. Retail CBDCs for consumers have begun drawing more attention, Tim has said. Now, retail CBDCs, which exist mostly in countries that are considered emerging markets, such as the Bahamas and Nigeria, can bring more people into the financial system. And if anything, we recently covered how that is possible from a particular case study of a project that was built on Stellar. If you'd like to find out more information in regards to that, check out one of the last Stellar videos we did. I believe it was the second to the last one. Now, while most of the live launches of CBDCs have been emerging economies, retail digital currencies can boost financial inclusion in all markets, Tammin said. Now listen to this, 20% of the US population is underbanked, which she also said. Now, as far as the global charge, as we know from Project Hamilton, they are just one of about 100 CBDC projects around the world. And this is one of the key things I want you guys to pay attention to, because this is why we put a lot of focus on the likes of, for instance, XRP, XLM, and especially Qnt. So my thing is this, if XRP is that on-demand liquidity that that the banks are going to be utilizing, right, especially the central banks, and XLM is basically the peer-to-peer side of what we're going to see to complement that and be part of that quote-unquote utility run. And at the same time, you have got to consider what Qnt brings to the table based on everything that they have already done. And for people who said, well, I'm not aware of what they've already done, or I don't think they have done that much, I will basically refer back to what LAC chain and what they accomplished in Latin America in a bear market during a time where not anybody else was accomplishing those type of things. You can find out more information, go to our recorded videos section if you're new. Now, look at this. So it says there are about a dozen active CBDCs according to the Atlantic Council, which counts another 17 in pilot and more than 70 in research and development. Overall, nearly 80% of central banks are at least considering CBDCs. And this, again, is why I feel that much more bullish on all three of these, especially, right? because again, that supply and demand. If you have 80% of the central banks are at least considering CBDCs, and on top of that, you have, for instance, where we have the example from Project Hamilton was just one of about 100, or I should say 100 CBDCs. You can have an idea of how much, again, supply and demand there is for specifically these particular cryptos, Qnt, XRP, and even XLM. And since 2023 began, the central banks of the Republic of Turkey started piloting a digital Turkish lira, successfully completing the first payments, with more tests scheduled for later this year. And I think, if anything, you're going to start seeing even that much more demand for the likes of Qnt, because they understand security. As we know, if you've been doing a little bit more of your own research, crypto was huge in Turkey, right? Huge. But what happened? They had to deal with quite a few things such as hacks, right? So all the more, if the people of Turkey basically want to continue to implement the likes of crypto and so on, they have to have something super secure. I think, if anything, Qnt is definitely one that stands out for providing that security. Now, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York has its own projects underway, separate, of course, from Project Hamilton. The Federal Reserve Bank's projects do not advocate for a digital dollar, but listen to this. They're focused on figuring out how a digital dollar would work. And again, how are they figuring that out? Well, they invite the likes of, Gilbert Verdian, Martin Hargreaves, and other key players from the Qnt network to help them understand how we can get this done. And again, that is utilizing their particular technologies to make this all work. Whether it's in the form of Overledger and whatnot, these particular guys from this team, as in Qnt, bring a lot to the table. How do we know that? Again, look into their resume. You can draw your own conclusion on how many years experience they all have as a collective body to bring to the table. So, retail CBDCs for consumers, other digital assets such as stablecoins, and more traditional payments. I need to read that again, actually. Here's the thing. I'll read this whole thing again. Or stated, I should say. The Federal Reserve Bank projects do not advocate for a digital dollar, but they are focused on figuring out how a digital dollar would work, especially in a world where there will be a mix of wholesale CBDCs for large bank transfers. Right. Wholesale CBDCs. So already I'm thinking to myself, interesting. That's the XRP connection. That's Ripple's connection. Retail CBDCs for consumers, that is what? XLM's connection. Other digital assets such as stablecoins and more traditional payments. Quote, now this is again the Ripple connection. Literally, you'll see it in a second. It says, this is a very exciting step forward for the CBDC industry to address one of the biggest challenges in payments, interoperability, where different systems need to work together, said Anthony Welfare, Senior Advisor for CBDC and Global Partnerships at Ripple. Yeah, the Ripple connection. Listen to this. Welfare also worked with the UK's government and building use cases for a potential digital pound. He also states, the growth of CBDC trials and tests are building momentum, and with each there are distinct solutions that will ultimately require interoperability between different technologies and protocols, existing payment schemes, and across borders. On top of that, different currency options will need to work together and across borders. There are still concerns, though, over how digital currencies will impact traditional currencies and commercial banks. As such, the organizations testing CBDCs are reporting to authorities that still haven't made up their minds over whether a government digital currency is even necessary. But the key thing is, even if we have, for instance, half of those ones of that 80% that we mentioned above, that in itself will be quite the thing to say the least. Now, one of the primary worries is that CBDCs will adversely impact traditional commercial bank accounts. Listen to this quote. There could be a drain on commercial banks if people feel there is more stability in a central bank. Emma said. So central banks are going to move very carefully. In countries such as China, the CBDC model is focused on a centralized structure within the central banks that controls transactions. While in India, the central bank is engaging more with third parties, according to Tamaz, adding there is an argument to involve private companies. And, let's face it, recently with India, about a month ago, they did, as a collective body with their government officials, put in a vote to officially get a CBDC. Now, there's a danger, though, that central bank digital currencies will stifle development of an innovation in private digital currencies by banks and fintechs, according to Eric Grover, who's basically a principal at Intrepid Ventures. A U.S. digital dollar would reduce, if not eliminate, fintech's appetite for issuing and innovating in stablecoins, he said. Now, in regards to stablecoins, listen to this. Stablecoins whose values are pegged to traditional currencies such as the US dollar are designed to mitigate the volatility of other digital assets such as cryptocurrencies. Stablecoins are also seen as enabling financial inclusion by reducing reliance on a centralized delivery system for financial services, I should say. CBDCs are often positioned as having those same goals, though with the backing of a central bank. And think about this. If they have those same goals, and it's with, like what it says here, the backing of a central bank, well, that is key, to say the least, because you can draw, again, some of these particular connections. One of my things would definitely be to mention the likes of Ripple's on-demand liquidity. Now, going further into this, quote, new government payment systems should bear a high burden of proof, Grover said. State-operated payment systems should be privatized unless there's a compelling national interest, he said. Underperforming government systems often get more resources. Most payment innovation comes from the private sector. But the key thing here is payment innovation. And the ones that we know who have been more than innovative but haven't been fully utilized yet, keyword yet, is definitely Ripple's XRP. And you can even throw Stellar's XLM into the mix because of what they're going to bring for those peer-to-peer payments, the retail sector. Now listen to this. Beyond interoperability and concerns over CBDCs competing with other forms of payments, there are also concerns over privacy for a payment form that uses decentralized technology and has ties to central banks. Quote, there will be a need to balance privacy with rules that we have around data collection and anti-terrorism and money laundering. And that particular quote in itself is the Qnt connection that I want people to understand. And the reason I want to state this, there's numerous times that Gilbert Verdian specifically mentioned some of these specific things. Don't believe me? Well, if you're new, go to our recorded video section. Simply click on videos. You can go in and you can literally see many clips where he specifically mentions anti-terrorism and money laundering. All right, on top of that, the role for banks, because basically that's what it's all about. If a CBDC is to be adopted, it must be properly configured and implemented as a critical national infrastructure, protected in the same way as existing payment systems, and must be scalable, interoperable, and comply with anti-money laundering regulations. And here's the kicker. This was quoted by Gilbert Verdian, CEO and founder, as we know, of Qnt. Yeah. There's a reason why I say go back to the clips, but it's another thing to actually show you this particular quote. Again, think about the big players here. Qnt, Ripple, and even Stellar. The digital assets need to be secure, implementing the highest cybersecurity standards against fraud and cyber attacks. Meeting all these requirements in 2023 will be a big task, but is ultimately feasible. And if anything, Qnt's Overledger helps leapfrog this closer to the finish line more than any other single project in the crypto space, if you will. Why? Because we know that this has already happened. How Qnt has helped other blockchains by being able to scale to the point where they didn't have to wait 3 or 4 years to get the same type of thing done, but with a different blockchain. They were able to accomplish it with what? Qnt. That's basically blockchain agnostic and uses the likes of Overledger to get it done. All right, listen to this. One possible design is a two-tier model proposed by the Bank of International Settlements. And again, shout out to Crypto Lugu, who's always covering this all the time. Coach JV even talks about this all the time for 3T Warriors Academy. Central banks authorize financial institutions to set aside a portion of retail CBDCs as traditional currency, which is backed by the government. The banks would then manage payments between consumers and businesses. Consumers and businesses could immediately draw the connections to even the likes of, for instance, XLM, especially when it came to consumers. Now look at this quote. This is probably the one of the last ones on this particular one from American Banker from Gilbert Verdian. Gilbert states, that's much like today's traditional settlement processes. Now, back to what we're talking about. In this model, a CBDC network between central banks and commercial banks would use private blockchains. Financial institutions would need to authorize, or I should say, have the authorization to access the network. And commercial banks would link their own private blockchains to the broader CBDC network. Again, commercial banks would link their own private blockchains to the broader CBDC network. Who can help get this done? Qnt. How do I know this? Listen to this particular quote. Quote, this interoperability would facilitate transactions between each other payment companies, merchants, and consumers. Quoted by who? Yeah, you better believe it. Qnt's own CEO, Gilbert Verdian. Get a little bit more further into this. It says commercial banks and payment companies would not be disintermediated, according to Verdian. I actually have another quote from him. So there's this other quote I'm going to read as well. And this stuff, I mean, I know a lot of times I take a lot of deep dives into this, but I think it's worth it. It's good to know what's going on. So look at this. It says, instead, they retain clear roles and responsibilities with plenty of room for competition and innovation within the ecosystem. And central banks would not be responsible for commercial bank tasks such as customer relationships. Yeah, he said. Developing CBDCs with open source technology can additionally address the challenges around interoperability as it builds a path for the global community to collaborate and build standards by which CBDCs can function simpler and quicker, Welfare said. Now listen to this other quote from Welfare. He states, with CBDCs, stablecoins, and existing payments, there is no one-size-fits-all. And so to successfully achieve this interoperability cannot be done in silos, but rather as a payments ecosystem. Who was the original person who said this countless times about we need to achieve interoperability and it cannot be done in silos, but rather as a payments ecosystem? You guys have been following us for a while. You already know. Gilbert Verdian Qnt literally took this quote, and this comes from a guy from Ripple. Yeah, exactly. All right, going further down, there will be likely a CBDC management role for commercial banks, global card networks, and other payment companies. On top of that, the U.S. government is divided on the role on what banks should play. Republicans are pushing for a greater role for commercial banks in a digital dollar. XRP, Ripple's XRP, yeah. And Democrats favor a more direct relationship between consumers and the central bank. Stellar, XLM, yeah. In this environment, it's unlikely there would be a digital dollar that didn't make use of the existing commercial bank infrastructure. Government agencies additionally do not often engage directly with consumers for retail banking tasks, creating opportunities for commercial banks. That's fine, but who will engage directly with consumers for retail banking? It's going to be just that. It's going to be the likes of Stellar. Now, in regards to all this, there's this other quote. Central banks are not accustomed to dealing with the public, Tam has said. They don't have the infrastructure in place to deal with issues like someone's lost wallet or card, for example. Again, what I will state is this, and I've stated it many times, I'm not the only content creator who has stated this. With that particular statement that you just heard, think about Ripple's, on-demand liquidity. Greg Garlinghouse has said many times that, Ripple's XRP was never designed to do just that, where they cater to the retail consumer, right? So if you have a mechanism that isn't designed for that, then if anything, the other side, two sides to every token, if you will, is basically just that. Stellar's XLM. So it's kind of like an answer for both main problems, if you will. That's why a lot of times people make that connection. They say, for instance, if you're going to hold XRP, you should hold XLM. This is a perfect example of just that. All right, CBDCs will also add an option rather than push other payment choices aside, according to Narula. Quote, CBDCs will not replace any form of money or payments that we already use, Narula said. CBDCs will coexist. Now, I get it. When it comes to a lot of people, they don't exactly buy into that last statement, right? They look at it as though, okay, you're basically trying to ease the tension, if you will, when it comes to the whole concept of introducing CBDCs, because you don't want the world to go into panic. And I couldn't agree more, because if anything, I think you see a lot of that narrative that needs to be addressed. Right? You heard Gilbert Verdian mention a few times that he doesn't feel as though CBDCs will completely replace the monetary system. If anything, it will complement it. And then you see this particular statement from Narula, right? And I think that needs to be established. And whether or not it ends up becoming true is besides the point, whether we want to agree with that or not. I feel as though CBDCs are obviously going to be here soon, whether we like it or not. But what I was going to state is, I think it's just that, they are coming. At first, it is going to complement it, but in the end, it is going to do what? It's going to replace the monetary system completely. I do full-heartedly believe that, and I think a lot of people here believe that as well. All right, going to get a little bit more into this, because I want to show you a little bit more in regards to our particular coverage. If you're wondering about where those particular articles came from, believe it or not, they came from Qnt. And this was posted literally yesterday. And again, like it says right here, we are incredibly proud to be one of the 5 associations to have come together to form the UK Forum of Digital Currencies, alongside the City of London, the Payments Association, the City UK, and UK Finance. We as in who? Yeah, you better believe it. Qnt. Right? They're part of that whole mix, because if anything, Gilbert is already part of the Digital Pound Foundation. And again, it doesn't take much to draw that connection, and we have established that here before, especially if you're a newcomer to our particular channel. We do welcome you. Now, another thing I was going to show you is, again, this was the other one referring to what I shared with you guys earlier, and that did come from an American banker. Again, why would Qnt go through all the trouble and making informing us about these particular things? Because again, they are part of that quote-unquote CBDC connection. All right, you literally saw them, a few of them, get back from Massachusetts from doing work and so on, working also with the Federal Reserve. So easy to draw the connections if you take the time to do what? Research some of this. Now, another thing I want to show you guys, and that is shout out to Crypto Talk Now's own, a great member of our community, and that is Mentellect. A lot of times he comes to our live shows, he comments. Mentellect, I know it sounds like a crazy way of saying it, but he has great intellect. A lot of you guys already know who he is. I saw, for instance, on the comments of one of the recorded, somebody gave him a shout out. So I'm going to give him a shout out again. I wish I could have retweeted it, but he has it set up on his Twitter. You can't really do that, so I just did a quote and kind of bypassed it. So anyway, Mentellect, if you're happen to listen to this one's for you, my friend. He states, and this is a great, great quote: the QFS is the body. Quant is the brain. XRP and XLM is the blood. Now, if you're not understanding all of this, because you're like, well, what's QFS? Let me show you what QFS is. We're going to go straight to CMC. So you basically just can type in QFS and it'll come up with this. And this is the top QFS quantum financial system, no pun intended in relation to quant. So we're always talking about the likes of, for instance, ISO 222 in that particular list, and the ones that are related to it. But in reality, I think this is the ultimate cheat sheet right here. Maybe I'll take a screenshot and share it on my Twitter. You definitely see some of these, right? XRP and so on. Polygon's even part of this. Stellar, obviously Algorand. But look at the consistent correlation that we have here, right? XRP, right? ISO 222, Stellar, obviously Algorand, Quant. With ISO TC 307, Hedera's HBAR, IOTA, XDC, Casper, Energy Web Token, which I don't believe is officially ISO. But the point here is, even DAG, right? You have the Air Force connection, LCX, we covered quite a bit. I know Investor Place covered Electronium in the past. I was thinking about getting into that a while back, but I don't know if I'm going to get into that now. We have, for instance, ALBT, we cover that here. But again, look at this list, guys. Right, we're going to do a deep dive on Flare. We did do a little bit of coverage in regards to Flare, in regards to the airdrops and so on, and then even Quorum. You guys have been requesting that. This is the ultimate, top QFS quantum financial system, and I think if anything, this is something that we should really put a lot of focus on. And basically speaking, here at CTN, we do put a lot of focus on a lot of these, right? We put a focus on, Quant and so on. I guess I could sort by price, put Quant at the top, right? Anyway, Quant is sitting at $121.46. It's up 6% in 7-day period. Let's face it, anything above 5% when it comes to Quant at these particular levels is significant because of its high market cap, right? Its price. But yeah, I thought that was really cool to see this in regards to all that. Obviously we cover LCX quite a bit and so on. I mean, it's doing really, really well. 28% up, 75% for the particular week. ALBT is doing well. HBAR is doing pretty decent. But what is the consistent thing here, guys, is ISO 222, and especially what you see here for the QFS quantum financial system. That's the key thing. Understanding what you hold, understanding that there will be a utility run. There never was a real true utility run in crypto before. I think we're going to see it going into the bull run. Last but not least, speaking of just that, I put out a video roughly 10 days ago in regards to what's stated about going from a utility run, which will trigger the bull run. And if anything, we've gone up about 100 billion since then. I'm not stating that this is the start of the bull run, but there's a lot of indicators that it could very well be just that. And how do we know that? Well, I want to point out a couple things here, right? But for one, Bitcoin is now back into the 18s. And some people think that that's not too significant. In reality, it is a little bit significant. Because here's the thing, this did touch the 15s. And again, guys, if you haven't seen that previous video about where it's called the utility run that will trigger a bull run, I'd highly recommend that. I've stated in this channel that I realize I'm part of the minority when everybody else was stating that this bear winter was going to continue for another year or so on top of what we're at. I felt as though that there was enough indicators with the data, and I actually provide you guys data from a premium service called Investor Place. Again, shout out to Luke Lango and Charlie Shrem. You gotta keep in mind, Charlie Shrem has been in Bitcoin since it was $5 back in 2010. But the point is, that's why I like to do. I like to actually look at real data and then provide it to you guys. Yeah, I understand. I don't want to come across as like I'm a fortune teller, because I'm not. I could be wrong on some of the stuff. I mean, there could be a black swan event. Tether could crash. All these crazy things could happen. But in my humble opinion, I think that we are going to start to see crypto winter thawing out more rapidly, if you will. I'm not quite ready to state that the bull run's coming here, but man, there's a lot of indicators to show that it could very well be happening here soon. So guys, I want to go ahead and wrap up today's particular coverage. I feel as though that when it comes to Qnt, XRP, and XLM, those are the three. If I had to, some people say just pick three, don't pick four, just three. And then there you go. Qnt, XRP, XLM. Those are the ones that trigger the bull run. Those are the utility run that will trigger the bull run. Keep in mind, there's a difference when it comes to a bull run and all-time highs, and especially for those who are new to all of this. You got to understand that, you know what I mean? So the start of anything is, again, a lot different compared to, Bitcoin at 69,000 compared to where we're at now at, 18K and so on. But if you guys enjoy this particular coverage and deep dives that we do for the likes of, for instance, Qnt Xrp Xlm and various other ISOs or QFS and so on, by all means, we would really appreciate it if you liked, commented, and even subscribed to our particular channel. And if you just can't get enough of this, by all means, hit that bell notification. We have a live show every single day of the week at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And then also on top of that, we have weekly what is referred to as crypto roundtables. We have special guests from the community. For instance, Sean the Crypto Smith. By the way, check out his particular channel. You can simply type it on, with your phone or whatever the heck you use. And that basically is, the space Crypto Smith is all one word. He has great content. He did a really good job addressing, for instance, what's going on with this whole buyback thing, right? Whether people want to accept that's a real thing or not. I did a really good job of outlining that. So he does cover the likes of XRP. He does go into full detail, in some cases, a lot more than I may do it. So definitely check him out. Daniel Gayton, for instance, he does who's with our particular community. He does, for instance, a live show in the morning. So look out for him. And he does it basically like really, really early in the morning. I think roughly, I'm on mountain time. So, a lot of times I'll see that like at, 6 a.m. Or maybe even possibly earlier, because just simply, as his name sounds, Daniel Gayton, Gayton is the last name. So he does that in the morning. And then of course there's Waddy, the crypto hunter. He does, live shows with us and so on. He's part of that particular roundtable. We have other guests on our show. For instance, a lot of you guys know who he is, Jeremy, the crypto realist. So it's really, really cool to see some of these guys come on. I'll also give a shout out to, for instance, the Crypto Lounge, who's Michael. But we always look forward to providing active content to you guys. And guys, I'm gonna wrap it up because I realize it's been a long deep dive, to say the least. But I appreciate every single one of you who's helped our community grow. Our goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of this month. I think we do achieve that. So look out for more recorded content for the likes of Qnt Xrp Xlm, some of these other ISOs. We're really starting to make a lot of headway, even with HBAR, believe it or not. So have a great night, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.